Hello everyone and welcome back to round 6 of the chess.com Grand Swiss, currently being played in Riga, Latvia. It's Alexei Shurov versus Alireza Firouzja. After that 14-move brilliancy miniature that Jobava played, we have the most expected and the most awaited matchup, Shirov versus Firouzja, and it's quite an interesting game. Before we check out the game, we even have a photo of this clash, so there you have it. The first move for white for Shirov being made by Maris Krakops, the president of the Latvian Chess Federation. If you guys want to enjoy this for a few seconds, that's totally cool. Usually I spot at least something wrong with every photo, but here I can't seem to figure out anything. If you guys see anything weird about this photo, do share so we can all enjoy this, because I mean there's always something weird in a photo. That being said, let's check out the game. So Shirov with the white pieces opens with e4, and I was already surprised by Firouzja's choice of the first move, as he played c5 against everyone, so he wants to fight, he goes for the Sicilian, and I thought, Shirov being the attacking genius that he is, Firouzja would welcome the opportunity to play the Sicilian against him, but he goes for c6, he goes for the Caro-Kann defense. Why this is so? Probably to out-prepare him, as Shirov was of course expecting Firouzja to go for the Sicilian, but also maybe, I don't know, maybe he thinks that, I don't think Firouzja would think that he would outmaneuver him in some crazy lines, but this is more of a preparation thing, I believe. But okay, c6, the Caro-Kann defense, we have d4, d5, and now e5, going for the sharpest advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. We have bishop to f5 before closing the setup with e6, and now it's too early to go for the bayonet attack, and this has been very well analyzed for black, so you don't really have all that much to worry about. But Shirov goes for h4, and what better move to play in Riga, Latvia than the Tal variation of the advanced Caro-Kann, that is the h4 move. And now g4 could be a problem, because now if bishop g6, h5 is a problem. So here we have h5 by black. Now this will allow you to later on maybe put this knight on f5. This pawn on h5 will prevent white from pushing g4 at any point, so your knight will be nicely placed on f5. Since white already advanced his pawn all the way to e5, you're not going to be able to kick it away, so it makes sense. Bishop to d3, attacking this only developed piece, and now bishop captures, queen captures, and queen to a5 with check. And now you could block this with the knight to d2, you could play bishop to d2, you could play pawn to c3, you could play queen to d2. The bishop to d2 is what's usually played, but here we have knight to d2. Shirov will play c3 at some point, maybe then play knight to b3, kick away the queen, then maybe bring the knight to c5. So trying to take advantage of this weird position of the black queen. We have e6, and now knight to f3. And here, like we said, we want to bring this knight to f5, so we could play knight to e7 and then to f5, but Firouzja goes knight to h6, followed by knight to f5. There's probably some difference, I don't know what it is, but probably it's a very subtle thing that, someone who is very well versed in this opening will know. But okay, we have castles, and now knight to f5. The knight lands on f5 either way. We have knight to b3 now, attacking the queen, and the queen to a6, offering a queen trade. And now it's not that Shirov, doesn't want the queens traded off the board, even though he probably does enjoy positions with queens on the board, but this would just be, giving black a free development. So he just brings the queen back, queen to d1, and now bishop to e7. Now attacking this h4 pawn twice, but now comes bishop to g5. We have bishop captures on g5, and now the position has been reached before, and h captures on g5 exclusively was played here. But here, Shirov throws in a nice in-between move, a nice Zwischenzug, and he plays knight to c5, attacking the black queen on a6, and it is now as of move 13 that we have a completely new game, asking Firouzja, what do you do with your queen now? So obviously we should defend the b7 pawn, but it's very hard to imagine you playing something that doesn't defend it, maybe like queen to c4, but even this, isn't out of the question. But okay, he goes queen to b6. Now you still have pressure on this pawn, and also you are attacking the b2 pawn. So here, knight captures on g5, and now would you play here? Well, it's very, very tricky. If you go for something like queen captures on b2, probably what Shiro was hoping for, then this would be pretty much a dream position for him. You get to sacrifice some material on e6, f captures, knight captures, and here black is just really just terrible. I mean, knight to c7 check is being threatened. Whatever you play, let's say you play queen to b6 to prevent this. We can even play rook to b1, and now you really don't have a good move. Queen to d3 followed by queen to f5 can always be played. Now let's say after the queen moves, rook captures on b7, and black is completely busted. This would not end well for black. So instead, after knight captures on g5, we have knight to a6. You could also just capture on h4. This is perfectly fine, but Firouzja prefers development. He plays knight to a6. Now we have knight captures on a6, queen captures on a6. Not even b captures to keep attacking this pawn, because the queen is very well placed here on b6, attacking this. There's more pressure on the d4 pawn, the h4 pawn. That's not an h4 pawn. The h4 pawn is being attacked, and it would make sense to keep the queen here, but Firouzja has a different idea. He plays queen captures on a6, and now he says, all right, if you want to play something like g3, you can defend this pawn, but that's only going to weaken your king's position. So here instead we have c3. Sorry about that. And only now, Firouzja captures the h4 pawn. But now, Shiro will try to use the h file for himself. I know that sounds pretty crazy, but that's how Shiro rolls. So here, g5, knight to f5, and now king to g2. Now with some ideas of rook to h1, rook captures on h5. So queen to b6. Alireza now wants to bring the queen back with some queen to d8, queen to e7 maneuvers, but for the moment also pressuring b2. So b4 by Shirov, queen to d8, and now queen to d2, defending this knight on g5, and only now queen to e7, preparing to castle queenside. Rook 8 to b1, saying, all right, you castle queenside, then b5 is coming, and then I'm the one who's attacking. So Firouzja still waits with the castling. He plays rook to h6. Now he wants to play rook to g6, put pressure on the knight, and if the knight moves, maybe even h4 can be played, and then white king could be in trouble. So rook to h1, now saying, okay, if you play rook to g6 now, I'm just going to capture here, so it doesn't really make sense. So here, finally, Firouzja castles queenside. And, of course, you know that black is going to start an attack on the king side, so you want to beat him to it and attack on the queen side. So b5 here by Shirov, and you do not want to allow b captures on c6. That would be simply giving white too much. So c captures on b5 is the absolute best idea here. Rook captures on b5, and now we have h4. Starting his own attack on the king side, because we have castles on opposite sides of the board, and usually the player who starts attacking first will win the attack. So g4, we have to stop the attack somehow to continue our attack. Maybe we play something like rook h to b1, put pressure on b7. If b6, maybe we can even play a4, a5, maybe we can play c4, bust open the position this way. And here Alireza finds a very interesting move, and that is h3 with check. Rook to g6 is also possible, but then f4 defends it, and who knows what's happening there. So instead he goes for h3 with check, saying that, okay, if you capture now, which did not happen in the game, but I will just show it quickly. For example, captures, now we're going to play knight to h4 with check. And if king g3, rook to h8, and it's a really, really weird position where white probably has to play queen to g5, but black would of course keep the queens on the board. Captures, and we get this position where black is definitely better. So instead, Shirov played king to f1. He wants to, like we said, close the attack on the king side and start the attack on the queen side, and now rook to g6, attacking the knight here. So g captures on f5, rook captures on g5, and now f captures on e6. So destroying that pawn chain a little bit. F captures on e6, and only now rook captures on h3. And now how can Alireza continue the attack here? He starts with rook to f5. It makes sense. We want to play rook d to f8 and then put more pressure on the f2 pawn. And of course, Shirov needs to hurry up with the attack of his own. So c4, he wants to capture here, get the other rook into the attack. So d captures on c4. This is best for the moment, at least. The c file is closed, and now queen to c3, getting ready to capture here. So rook d to f8, now threatening rook captures on f2, and now we have queen captures on c4 with check, king to b8, and now rook back to b2, guarding that f2 pawn, and now queen to f7. Firouzja triples on the f file, now again threatening rook captures on f2, and now queen back to e2. So Shiro had to bring some of his pieces back from the attack, and now he's ready to bring this rook into the attack and hopefully open up the position with maybe pushing of the a pawn. But that's a lot of moves. So here, queen to c7, a really tricky move by Alireza. Now preparing queen to c1 check. For example, if you play something like rook h to b3 now, it looks very scary. But we throw in this check, and this is now a problem. For example, queen to e1. If you go here, then we just start with rook g5 check here, and then rook h8 will be game over. So here, let's say queen to e1. We're going to play queen to c4 with check, and now after queen to e2, again, if you go up the board, then the rooks are just ending the game. So queen to e2, but now let's say rook captures on f2, and that's it. The queen is pinned. Of course, the queen cannot capture, and after you move this, let's say captures, and queen c1 checkmate. So this is something that will be possible if this is allowed. So here, instead, queen to c2, blocking this check, and now queen back to d7. Here, the real question is, do you want to give up two rooks for a queen? And it would seem that this is the only way for Alireza to try and make progress in this position. For example, rook captures on f2. Okay, we pick up the queen, we give up the two rooks, or even we could throw in a queen to c4 check first, just to be closer to that d4 pawn. And now after king to g1, now we can capture on f2. For example, rook captures on f2, and now queen captures on d4. We get this position where this pawn will also be captured, as it's really impossible to defend it. If you defend it, then queen g4 check picks up the rook. So it would be, black would be better. Would it be enough? It's hard to say. All depends on how the players would play it. But instead, Firouzja goes queen to d7, and now we have rook h to b3. Now putting more pressure on the b7 pawn. And now again, should Alireza capture on f2? Once again, it's possible. It's a little bit different now. For example, captures, and captures with check. Now we get queen captures on d4, and it's a little bit different because now, for example, rook to f8 check, king c7, rook f7 check goes after the b7 pawn right away. King c6, and now you can pick it up with either rook, and you get this position. But still, black should be better. Again, it's hard to say would it be enough, but it would be a start. But Firouzja played b6, and this just allows Shirov to completely eliminate all of the threats. He just plays queen to c5. Rook captures on b6 is an instant draw, just in case you were wondering. Captures, and now after king to a8, we're going to play queen to c4, as you, of course, this is covered by the black queen, so we're going to play queen to c4, and now, for example, rook captures on f2, we go king to e1, and now after rook to f1 check, king d2, and now we get a nice perpetual here, because you really do not want to go up the board. That would be really bad for white, so we'd probably see some sort of a perpetual here. Sorry, after rook to f1, king to e2, not king to d2, obviously. So yeah, after b6, we have queen to c5, now preparing to put more pressure here. Then the queen could capture on b6, but now we have queen to b7 by Alireza, and now rook captures on b6, grabbing that pawn. And now we have, of course, rook captures on f2. Yeah, and instead of going for this rook captures on b6, there's really no way to make progress here. If you play something like d5, as soon as black plays king to a8, then you will no longer be able to exploit this. It's just a better position for black. Even though it looks like you could be doing something, your queen is hanging now, and now after the queen moves, you can simply play queen captures on d5. It doesn't really matter. Black would be up a pawn at least, and enjoying a better position. So here rook captures on b6 was played. We have rook captures on f2 with check. Now king to e1, and now of course rook to f1 with check. King to e2, and now a nice repetition of moves. Just rook f2 check, king e1, rook f1 check, king to e2, and it was in this position on move 42 that Shirov and Firouzja agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. So you could try to escape, but it really doesn't work. For example, if now after this check we go king to d3, just rook to f3, and that's a game over. King to c4, we're gonna play a captures on b6, and now if rook captures on b6, it looks very scary, but it's not. A rook to c2 with the check, and it's white who's in trouble. King to b5, and now of course rook to b2 check, and that's it. For example, king to c4, rook captures on b6, now white is completely busted. So yeah, after this king to e2 move, they agreed to a draw, and now it's a very interesting situation at the top, because they were sharing first place before the game, and now not all of the games have finished, but I think all the games that are able to have something to say about who's leading the tournament have been played, and now we have 3 people in the lead after 6 rounds, and that's still Alireza Firouzja, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, and Alexei Shirov after this wonderful game. So yeah, really an awesome clash. I thought it was very exciting. I was expecting the Sicilian and everything to just be flying, but Alireza thought that it'd be safer going for the Caro-Kann maybe, and then trying to exploit this. But in the end, it was Shirov who took a new turn and well, probably surprised Alireza a little bit. So yeah, great game. Very well expected performance from Alireza, but definitely impressive performance by Shirov, who for someone who with such an aggressive style to be so dominating and leading in such an event is always very pleasant to see. But yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Holo Isolt, and I would like to thank Heather Rose, Tom Deralo, Lucas Theokaris, and James Mayberry for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check all my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this amazing event, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Sunday.